Friends, I'm going to a little disappointing for you this morning because this is a conglomeration of entrepreneurs and practitioners, those who are actually doing the things on ground level. If the expectation is that I'm going to talk how your business can benefit from Make in India, it will be a little disappointing on your part because being an economist by profession, I'll be focusing more on the macro issues and a perspective on Make in India rather than going into the details of each business, how they are going to benefit from Make in India. But of course, in the process, I would also outline some of the benefits or some of the parameters which you may find useful. So pardon me because I'm an academician, number one. Number two, an economist by profession, not a practitioner of your sort. So, I'm going to take that perspective. So with this note, I would like to start talking about Make in India. Why is this line being picked up? I don't know the story behind it, but somehow we have been talking about India as a country which is basically looked at as a tiger in the cage when Southeast Asian countries were emerging. So Southeast Asian countries, emerging Southeast Asian countries were demarcated or looked at as a tiger. So they are tiger on the prowl. And perhaps India was not doing very good at that time because our growth rate was very low. If you look at the Indian growth story, it has been very disappointing till late 80s, and only after 90s that we started picking up a bit because liberalization was not so much happening in India by that time. So somebody said that India is actually a tiger, but it's a tiger in the cage. So you have to open the cage and then only it can actually do better. So probably, I guess that is the metaphor that government has picked up, that now tiger is unleashed, the cage is open, and now, India is on the prowl. Then there was another comparison which was made with elephant. Said, no, India is not a tiger, it's an elephant actually. So elephant is big, so India is big. Elephant has sympathy, empathy, can think, or it is harmless. It doesn't harm others like tigers. Tigers, if it goes wrong, then it can harm others. But elephant rarely actually go mad so much that it harms others. So probably we are a big elephant moving slowly. But that era is gone actually. I firmly believe that India cannot be compared with elephant. It can be compared with lion, of course, lion in the cage or tiger in the cage. What is this tiger we are talking about? Is this service we are talking about? Is it manufacturing we are talking about? Is agriculture we are talking about? So this time, very emphatically, the point has been made by the government that we are talking about manufacturing per se. And that's the reason why Make in India slogan has come. So let's talk about why manufacturing has been given a prominence. I have collected some information, data from government websites and sources, and I've taken 4 data for a period 2000 approximately to 2013-14, and these are the growth rates: agriculture, industry, services, and GDP. So vis-a-vis GDP, if you look at agriculture, industry, and services, yellow line is quite high, though it has shown some tendency of getting plateaued in the post-2006-07 era when the financial crisis struck, or economy actually were sliding down. But if you look at industry per se, industry is how government actually looked at industry and compiled data is, industry has got 3 components in the national income accounting. One is the manufacturing, which is the most dynamic component in industry. Another is mining, so they also take mining, and third is electricity. So industry means all 3 together. So it has manufacturing, but manufacturing is not industry per se, right? But manufacturing being the most dynamic part in the industry can also replicate manufacturing. So if you look at the growth rate by 2012-13 of late, less than 1%, 0.96. So I put in data over there so that we can make out what is happening to industry and manufacturing. So it's less than 1%. And then it has slided down to less than 0.5%. Is this a matter of concern? It's a matter of serious concern. Why this is a matter of serious concern is also because of the fact that if you look at the comparison in the sense that how our national income is being contributed by three different sectors, like what is the proportion which is coming from agriculture, what is the earning that is coming from industry, what is the earning which is coming from service sector. So what is the contribution of these three major sectors in the total national income generation or income generation in our economy? We find that manufacturing per se, here we have the data for manufacturing, is about 15%. It hasn't changed much over time. You look at 1950-51 to 2000, down 2013-14, it's a long period. We are talking about the entire planning period in India, right from the beginning of planning in 1951, right? First 5-year plan. And we are talking till date. It's a much larger area, time span we are talking about. It hasn't changed much, from 11% to about 15%. It's almost stagnated. Rather, if you start looking at from the real point of view or real data point of view, adjusting for inflation, because these data is not adjusted for inflation, these are current estimates based on the market prices. So if we adjust that, that will give us the idea that the share of manufacturing in the total national income generation actually has gone down quite considerably. It's a matter of serious concern. Why? Because number one, we are looking for employment, and employment elasticity of agricultural output, elasticity of service output is of course positive and good enough, but not so good enough to absorb the growing labor force in India. Manufacturing is one which gives a very fairly high employment elasticity for output, generated in manufacturing. But since manufacturing is on the decline and therefore it's a big casualty to employment. That's number one. Number two is that, when service is taking place, and if you have a growth rate of about 8%, let's say, and the contribution of service is about 80% to that growth rate, then you become dependent on the rest of the world. Your dependency on the rest of the world will increase because services are not tangible outputs. And when you have a growth rate of 8% to 10%, high growth rate for the economy, your income generation or per capita income starts increasing at a faster rate. And then you need to spend those money somewhere. And since the physical goods and services are not there because manufacturing is going down, so you need to be buying it from the rest of the world. Your import is going to increase. Your import is likely to increase. And also the demand for goods and services from outside your country will increase. So it's a lost opportunity for the native entrepreneurs. So manufacturing is a lost opportunity for the native entrepreneurs. That's second. Third is more philosophical nature, because any economy cannot survive without manufacturing. You need to have goods and services which are tangible goods and services. In the social transformation, how it happens in any economy is that when the economy starts taking off, then agriculture becomes very prominent, and more than 80% people will be engaged in agriculture. About 70 to 80% income will come from agriculture. But as the economy grows, the industry comes in and the service sector comes in, or at a very fairly high rate of growth for the economy, or high per capita income for the economy. The service is going to be the highest. That is what is happening in India. But in between, if industry is missed out or it goes down, then that economy becomes vulnerable. It has actually been seen all across the world. So this runs the risk of our country being vulnerable if manufacturing goes down. And that's the reason why there's so much of emphasis and urgency to take this manufacturing up. The sources of growth in a global economy had changed. I'm going to point, make one single point over here, which is very interesting. All of you should consider this. If you look at the demography is the study of population, right? And how the population pyramid is formed, and over a long period of time, how population actually grows in what manner. If you look at India, it's very different from the rest of the world. You look at Europe, or for that matter, any developed country, and in vis-a-vis India, the situation which was there in Japan in about 1950s is the situation which we have today in terms of demographic dynamics. China has already lived it, and the other countries also. That's the reason why we are making so strong comparison with China, that demographic changes are more favorable to India currently than the rest of the world. But the rest of the world is actually witnessing the aging population much more, right? And here we are witnessing young population much more. And therefore the comparison is made between India and China quite often, that India has got advantage in terms of demographic dividend because by 2020 or 2025, the average age of Indians is going to be about 27 years, which is much, much younger in the rest of the world, right? And its average age is exceeding 57, 60 in some of the countries. I mean, look at the productivity, where from the growth source will come. I mean, if the rest of the world is aging, therefore that's why I have called it demographic drag. I'm talking about demographic drag for the rest of the world. And why it is important for India, because India is enjoying demographic dividend, but rest of the world is going to undergo demographic drag. So this means the overseas demand for our product, even if you are going in a big way in manufacturing or services, the overseas demand for our product will be absolutely different from what the Indians would be asking for. Because the youngs are going to ask for a different product, the average age of 60, is going to ask for a different product, right? And therefore this dynamics has to be, and secondly, where from the sources of growth will come. Look at the estimation. Unless there is an increase in labor productivity compensating for the aging workforce, the next 50 years will see a nearly 40% drop in GDP growth rates and a roughly 20% drop in the growth rate of per capita income around the world. So that's the signal. And so what is that is going to compensate for the demographic drag? Is the productivity increase. That's what McKinsey report says. Very recently it has come and it has given a very nice picture of what is going to happen to the sources of growth around the world. So what does this mean actually? This means that productivity hike in several areas within the existing structure is going to compensate for the demographic drag. So therefore it means that the way you are already doing your business, one is that looking for the new business or new opportunities. Another is that the way you are doing your current business. So what it says is that in developing countries, this opportunity is much more than the developed countries. So if developed countries can encash upon this productivity about 30 to 40%, developing countries can encash about 70 to 80%. Look at your existing business, the way you are doing it. Can productivity be increased within the framework that you already have? Let's have a look at it. Look at agriculture. Productivity increase in emerging economies could add to more than 40% of employment by 2025. Agriculture alone, right? So what we need to do is to look at the practices, current practices, the way it has been managed, technology use, innovations, and the productivity within the existing structure can add up to 40% of employment in agriculture. Food processing, about 59% in emerging economies. Just with the help of operational improvements. Just with the help of operational improvements. There is a huge service delivery gap. There is a huge operational gap. And this is what the McKinsey report says, that you need to look into that. This is the new source of growth. This is the new source of growth. Automotive. The overall productivity could increase by 90%, especially in China and India, involving greater scale and improved manufacturing processes. India is scared of scale. Look at the banking sector, financial sector, even your simple business sector. We have been scared of scale. The government is scared of scale. Individuals are scared of scale. Why are we thinking big? The fifth largest bank in China has an operation which is much more than the largest bank operating in India. Where is the scale? An automotive has to have a big scale. Retail. Global productivity in this sector is 30% lower than the average productivity. Retail is not an efficient sector all over the world. And those who are working in retail has a huge opportunity because your productivity is less by 30% in comparison to the other operations. So look at this, how this can be bridged in and how the productivity can further be increased. For example, the emergence of more productive formats. We are yet to experiment with that. Narrowing down the gap between low and high productive outlets in a given format. And using new technologies and processes. Likewise, healthcare, developing innovative delivery models. If the income of individuals are rising about $1,500 per capita in India, the demand is going to change its whole structure. The way services are being demanded is also going to change. Say, for example, a good hospital is one thing. State-of-the-art hospital is one thing. But are we thinking about new health models to improve upon this service delivery? For example, health services at home, very much in demand. Providing care outside the hospital settings. And therefore, Make in India makes a lot of sense. It aims at making India as a manufacturing hub. The government is ensuring a smooth sailing for investors by setting up a dedicated cell to answer queries within 72 hours and remove all regulatory barriers. This is a commitment by the government. How much actually is going to happen, I'm not going to comment on that. It's a political framework that we have to look at, but this is what the government is actually committing. Sectors, if you look at the entire structure in which Make in India is being formed and is being executed, the aim is to bring in big investors in India, foreign investors. But I'm looking at opportunities for the SMEs, and that's why I'm outlining all these things. Government is saying that, yes, of course, they are going to come up with some kind of policy about how to assimilate SMEs but one thing is very clear that in a country like India, if government forgets SMEs and if government doesn't give a full support for the SMEs to grow, things are not going to materialize well. That's for sure, because SMEs is the key source of growth in times to come for Indian economy. And therefore, I'm talking about this steel, sheet metal parts, body and chassis, fan belts, pressure die casting, things like that. Wheeler segments, two-wheeler segments, right? So these are opportunities, because if foreign investments are brought into car market, automobile markets, now all these ancillaries functions, which is emerging out of new dynamics of the economy and the demography, is going to be the catch for the SMEs. Let's talk about food processing. India's food processing sector ranks 5th in the world in exports, production, and consumption. So how much leverage we have been able to make out of this food industry? Beverage segment, or things like mega food parks, and the entire dynamics of food consumption is changing, because now people are looking for health products, environmentally friendly goods of food. They are in demand because with every rise in per capita income, people are going to look for more and more healthy products. So these are big opportunities for us. Textile and garments is yet another opportunity. Their data suggests that Indian textile industry accounts for about 24% of world's spindle capacity and 8% of global rotor capacity. What it says is that basically we have tremendous opportunity in textile and garments. Tourism and hospitality is yet another area. Like medical tourism, that's one emerging area, need not emphasize too much. Cruise tourists means those who are looking for the seashore and the beautiful coastline, virgin forests. This is also on rise. Rural tourism is yet another. So exposing to the rural life, it presents a wonderful opportunity for SMEs. Arranging all this ecotourism. Then we have the segments like opportunities, something like timeshare resorts, convention sector, motels, heritage hotels, and things like that. Investment opportunities, setting up of tour operations and travel agencies is also a big opportunity in the wake of how tourism industry is going to change. Wellness is another area. which I would like to point out. The demand for, let's say, Ayush. Ayush is Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. So all together is called Ayush. And its demand overseas is rising like anything. India's wellness market is estimated about 490 billion. And wellness services alone comprise 40% of the market. And these are the areas where market is already existing, like Western Europe, Russia, USA, Kazakhstan, Nepal, Ukraine, Philippines, Kenya. So this is another area which can come under business. Renewable energy is yet another, because environmental consciousness is rising. The solar, wind power, small hydro, biopower, things like that. Rajasthan is one of the forerunner in this area. Gujarat is also doing a good job. And I know a couple of SMEs managed by a single person who is doing so well in solar, and they are making their presence felt at the international level, doing good business. Construction is yet another, like green building solutions, or maybe urban water supply, urban sewage and sewage treatment, and things like that. Not free from challenges. I would like to just wind up by putting a couple of points here. Healthy business environment creation is one need which is lacking in India. Second is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is one of the biggest hurdle. Earlier we used to talk about rent-seeking behavior of our bureaucrats, and post-90s people say that rent-seeking behavior has gone. Now bureaucracy is not into rent-seeking, but I don't believe that. Rent-seeking is still there in our bureaucracy. Rent-seeking means enjoying the position or utilizing the power that is vested in you, and then making somebody victim out of that, or taking extra advantage out of that. So this process is known as rent-seeking. So wherever, say for example, licensing or granting permission. Granting permission means you are giving some benefit, or benefits are associated with some kind of permission. If you have the authority to give permission, then you enjoy that power. So you are not actually giving permission, you are actually giving fortune, right? And every fortune has a cost, so you actually enter into rent seeking. This has happened in India in 1670s in a big way, but it's still continuing. Competitiveness. Manufacturing competitiveness has lost, and government has to create a good business environment where the competitiveness of manufacturing should come back. So a lot of work to be done. And a small and medium-sized industry can play a big role in making the country take to the next big step. And any policy which neglects medium and small industries is not going to help the country in that way. So this is my take. And there will be a comparison always, because there is a big slogan that has been made by the government, new government. And there will be a comparison from India, made in China always, because these two have actually been launched around the same time. So as we know that Indian independence is also almost like similar to the planning commission, planning processes which are started in China. So both the planning processes were started. That's the reason why the comparison becomes polemic in nature when we start doing it with China, right? So one of the interesting thing was about gender, let's say, for example. The women labor force participation in China is quite high in comparison to India. So if you look at the demographic composition and adjust for the women labor force participation, the more young does not mean that all of them are going to enter into labor force. It depends on women labor force participation. If that rate is low, that much of young labor force will withdraw and sit at home, right? So you have to adjust for it. So the moment you do this adjustment, we find that by 2020, India's dependency rate is going to be higher than China instead of lower than China. So I mean, these comparisons are hidden comparisons. Government will never talk about that. They're difficult. R&D. is extremely important because research and development is going to play a big role. And even SMEs, sectors, research and development is extremely important. I don't have to talk much about it. Thanks. So this is what I would like to share with you this morning. As I said, this may be a big disappointment for some of you because I thought of talking about the macro issues. I'm not a practitioner, not an entrepreneur. I'm entrepreneur in my own way. I'm an academician running a business school. I deal with students, manage things over there. So I consider myself as an entrepreneur in education sector, not in other sectors. Thank you very much. So this is an economist perspective.